What's that? Well, the tumbler? Oh, you wouldn't be interested in that.
So what do you think?
Does it come in black?
Welcome back to LVA. Got a little bit of a different, exciting project going on here. This video, we're gonna start installing some of our aero parts on the C8 Corvette platform. This video specifically is gonna be our belly pan mounted front splitter. So stay tuned, enjoy, and hopefully you get an install as clean as this. Step one to get your front splitter installed, you are gonna have to remove the front bumper cover for this install. And to do so, you're probably gonna wanna get this car in the air. For us, we're gonna use a 2-post lift. We've done it before in a 4-post lift. It's probably a little bit easier on the 2-post. And of course, you can do a quick jacks or trusty normal jack and jack stands. Don't forget the jack stand. So let's get this thing in the air and then we'll go from there. Okay, now that we have the C8 up in the air, supported on the lift safely, we're gonna go ahead and get into the first step of this install, which is gonna be removing that front bumper cover, as well as a portion of this factory belly pan as well. Rather than showing you guys what tools you need up front laid out on the counter, we're just gonna go ahead and get right into the install, and we'll tell you what tools and what sockets and what bits to use as we go along. So step one, we're gonna do things a little bit backwards. Rather than starting with the bumper removal, we're gonna pull off the 2 front wheels and go from there. All right, let's get the wheels off. It looks like it's about a 22 millimeter socket. I'm not exactly sure what it is in the SAE sizes, but we're gonna use a 22. All right, step 2, we're gonna open up the frunk. There is a button on the lower inside portion of the door. Just gonna press that and unlock that. Okay, once you get the frunk open, we're gonna go ahead and start removing all of this plastic shrouding, pretty much all the way up the top around the bottom. So if you start here on the left side, you probably can just get it with your fingers. These are just clipped in. Just take your time. Go ahead and pull that guy out of there. This one goes all the way up, almost close to the hood mount. Perfect. We'll set these to the side. All right, next up, really the goal here is we're trying to get this front one off, and unfortunately, the front one is underneath this back one. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this back one as well. Again, mainly all clips. Hopefully you won't break anything. You probably shouldn't. Just kind of be gentle with it. If you feel resistance, be careful. All right. Last piece, front one. Same method here. Just keep pulling these things out. You'll notice they're kind of up under the fender, so you almost have to pull up and kind of towards the tray in here. Perfect. Okay, forgot to mention the step before, if you want to make this lower shroud removal a little bit easier, just pull back this trunk liner seal and that'll make it a little bit better. So if you come in here, there's going to be 6 T15 Torx bits along the top. I believe you don't have to remove this one and you don't have to remove this one. So it's really just this one here, I guess here, here, these 2 in the middle, there and there. So let's pull those out. Try not to drop them into the abyss. Okay. The next bolt you're going to remove, this is a 10 millimeter that is kind of up facing forwards, facing the front of the car to the inside part of the headlight. To get this out, you can use probably a 1/4 inch drive ratchet or this little handy dandy 90-degree angle impact with a 10 millimeter socket on it. So we're just gonna pull this out. And then also repeat that on the other side. And that's gonna be all of the hardware along the top. Here's the driver's side fender liner. We shot some clips on the other camera with the passenger side, and I think it'll be more helpful to have some of the GoPro footage to help you guys out as well. So let me grab a flashlight and we'll kind of highlight some of these hardware locations. So starting right off the bat, right here on the kind of where the driver's side fender meets the bumper, you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 T15 Torx. Then over here, not only on the top of the brake duct, but also on the bottom, you have 1, 2, and then one over here on the side, 3 T15 Torx bits. Then as we come up here, we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, a sneaky 5th one back here. Again, all of those T15 Torx bits. We're gonna pull off this cover right here. We'll show you how to do that. Let's start off by removing all of these T15 Torx screws, and then we'll go from there. Okay, 7mm lined up. Go to the bottom side here. Right here is that 7mm bolt. I'm gonna simply remove that first. Perfect. Set that to the side. All right, now we're gonna grab everyone's favorite tool, the trim removal tool. I find it's easiest to start on the top and kind of work our way down. So I'm gonna slide it in the back. And we're just gonna slowly start pulling and prying forward until those clips release. Be a little tricky to get the first one started. Again, we're not trying to break these, just trying to get them to come out. Okay, there we go, we got one. Let's continue working our way down. 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Now there is one more important thing to note, is once you get that mud flap off, there's going to be 2 more T15 Torx screws to remove before that fender liner can start coming off. So let's pop those out. Okay. Perfect. Now you'll start to feel the entire fender liner loosen up. But before we pull this guy out, we got some work to do on the bottom side. Now that we're on the underside of the fender liner, we've got a couple of screws and bolts to remove before we can pull this guy out. So we're gonna start right here. Up underneath this kind of rubber flap, there's actually a hidden T15. So go ahead and pop him out. And then as we move into this kind of duct on the bottom, there's gonna be 2 more. Nice. Then we're gonna switch over to a 7mm, and we've got 2 right here. Perfect. Okay, now that those are all out, we're gonna go ahead, lower the car a little bit, and we should be able to yank this fender liner out. Everything has been disconnected. It's gonna take a little bit of wiggle work to get this out of here, but shouldn't be too difficult at all. So I like to start back here and kind of release it up from this upper fender. You'll see that it's kind of tucked behind the fender and the bumper. And once you get that free, it makes it a lot easier to pull out. Just like this. And then also get it around that brake duct. Keep pulling. Make sure you're getting this out from, sometimes it gets pinched up in the suspension. Pinched up here back behind the fender. There we go. And now your driver's side fender liner has been removed. Before we start disconnecting some electrical, we're gonna have to free the bumper from the fender, and there's a mount right here that holds it in. So if we take a look up in here, there are, right here is where it meets. There are 3 7mm bolts that are holding it in. Now you might think, hey, I gotta remove all 3 of these bolts. You don't. The only one that's actually going clear through the mount is this first 7mm. So we're gonna remove that completely, and then we're just gonna loosen these 2, and then we're gonna be able to pull this off. We'll start removing this first. I find it gets kind of tricky to do with the ratchet. Once you get it broken loose, I like to just kind of twist the socket with my hand and back it out the rest of the way. Awesome. Okay, now I'm just gonna crack top 2 loose, and then we should be good to pull this off. Okay, those 2 are all set. Now that those 2 have been loosened and the first one removed, we can ever so slightly separate the bumper from the bumper defender mount. So I'm gonna work right here. Now what you're gonna notice is I'm gonna kind of push up as well as pulling back, just to kind of release those clips just a little bit easier. There we go. Feel them pop, got one more on the top. And now it's separated. And now we have nothing broken, everything's good to go. We're back over to the passenger side fender liner wheel well area. That fender liner has been removed, and we do have to disconnect one electrical clip that goes to a harness along the bumper right here. Really simple to do. All we're gonna do is we're gonna take a flathead screwdriver, and we're gonna push this guy, the little red guy, back. I have to support the back side. Just push that all the way back. Awesome. Once that's back, we can push right here, and that should release the connector. After you disconnect the wiring harness on the passenger side, this harness is actually clipped on right here. So we're gonna have to go ahead and unclip that to remove the bumper safely. Let's get some light on it. And all we're gonna do is, I believe this is slid. Nope, it's a little push clip. So we're gonna take our pry tool, slide it on top. We're just gonna pry this guy right off. A little outward force, there we go. So after you finished both wheel wells, I guess I forgot to mention, go ahead and repeat that process on the opposite side. Have both of those fender liners removed, both of those bumper clips popped from the fender. We're gonna take out some more, you guessed it, T15 and 7mm bolts on the underside to release the lower part of the bumper. So, kind of coming off where we left off with the fender liner, there's another T15 right here. I'm gonna pop him out. There's another one going up here, a third one here, and then we're gonna transition, or I guess, let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and then move over to the 7mm. So remove all these. You can do this, by hand if you like self-punishment. If not, I suggest putting it on an impact driver or a drill of sorts. Make this process way, way, way faster. Okay, again, now we're gonna come up, move over to the left, pop this one out. Okay, switch over to our 7mm socket. I'm just gonna make a straight line over to the driver's side. While we're in the bottom, we're going to remove the center T15 Torx bit bolt that is holding on the Z51 package is holding the Z51 lip on the normal 1LT and other Stingray models without the Z51 lip. There should be a similar T15 here. So this middle one goes straight up into a bracket that's attached to the crash bar. We're not gonna be able to take the bumper off unless we take this out. There we go. Yep, so now we have this left side completely loose, and we should have, the entire middle loose. So keep it going. Repeat this on that side. Switch back to our T15 and pop all these out as well. Okay, that should loosen up the bottom. Now, if we go to pull the bumper and we feel that something is still attached, we'll come back in a later clip and tell you what else you have to remove. The goal here, what we're trying to do, a lot of people when they remove the bumper, they just go through and they take all of these front ones off, and that'll allow you to pull the bumper off but keep the belly pan. But we are going to mount our splitter to all of this plastic underpinning section. So we're gonna try to remove that while it's still attached to the bumper cover. So let's get on to the next step. Okay, welcome to the next step. You've got everything disconnected in the wheel wells on the bottom and all of the hardware out of the top. So really, there's only two things holding this bumper on, and those connections are right here between the fender and the top of the bumper. Now there's a couple clips there that we have to release, but before we do that, we don't want to ruin the paint in our shiny new Corvette. So we're going to take some masking tape and we're going to mask off the connection between these 2 points. So I like to take the tape and just slide it right in the gap on both sides. This is a black car, so even if we don't scratch it and we just scuff it, you're still going to see that scuff and it's going to drive you crazy. So no matter what color you have, just take some tape, mask up both sides so that when we slide our trim tool in there, it is not going to get damaged. So I'm going to jump over here, do the same thing to this side, and then once we have this all masked up, we're going to be ready to slide our trim tool in, disconnect this, and pull this bumper cover off and get the splitter installed. Awesome. Now, as a precautionary measure, I'm also going to say we should probably apply tape maybe to the lower portion of the headlight as we slide this around, and probably down the portion of the bumper that comes down around the headlight. All this stuff is at risk of getting touched when you pull it, so better safe than sorry. So let's just put on a little bit more tape. Okay. All right, I'm gonna continue doing this. No sense in having you guys watch the whole process. Just, you know, over tape if needed, and that's it. Okay, now that everything is taped up, we're gonna take our trim tool and we're going to start taking off the bumper from this upper fender mount. So I'm gonna press the tape in pretty slightly. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna work from the headlight side inwards. So we're gonna wedge this in. We're gonna see if we can get it underneath without scratching or damaging the surface. Heard that one pop. Perfect. Let's get that underneath there and keep going. All right, we're fully under. Luckily we have that tape there to protect it. Now I'm just gonna pull, now that I have it up pretty much all the way with my hand, I'll pull on both sides and be careful not to damage any of the clips. Perfect. Now that's released. Let's flip over, do it on the other side. Again, just in case I didn't cover it in the first one, we're gonna work headlight in, get this right in that corner, get that lifted up, the tape sticking, go ahead and pull it. And once we get it open enough, grab it with the hand and release it fully. Awesome. Okay, now that everything is disconnected from the top, the bottom, the wheel wells, we are ready to remove the bumper cover safely. If you have a buddy, highly recommend getting your buddy to come over, giving you a hand, but you can totally do it yourself. I'm gonna use this stool and kind of slide it under the center of the bumper. That way, if anything catches or it's not going great, I don't have to drop it on the floor. I can kind of set it on the stool and maneuver it around. So to get started, you're gonna grab here on the edge, and right here, we're gonna kind of lift and pull up and around. So feeling everything kind of come on the bottom. All right, we're gonna let that hang there for a second and carefully move over to the other side. Do the same thing here, and disconnect that around the headlight. Once you feel it start to come off of the car, I like to grab it in the center and just slowly pull it down and off. And there we go. Our front bumper cover is removed. Okay, it is a new day for us, not a new day for you guys, same video, but nonetheless, we've got the splitter in front of us for the C8 Corvette, as well as the contents. So before we dive into the install, I wanna go over exactly what you're gonna get when you purchase this front splitter. Right in front of me, we have the splitter itself. Don't worry, it is black underneath, it's just protective film. I like to emphasize that in all of the videos. Probably wouldn't believe it, but some customers actually email in, they're like, hey, you know, why is my splitter white with LVA logos on it and not black? So nonetheless, it's a protective film on both sides. We're gonna keep this on for the bulk of the installation. You really don't wanna remove this before you have to. You're gonna run the risk of getting some marring and scratching during the installation process. So let's look at the splitter itself. This one has a pre-installed black edge trim. We do offer numerous colors of edge trim. I believe they're right up behind me. We've got the orange, white, red, green, yellow, blue, black, and white, I think, if I didn't mention that already. So regardless, multiple different colors of edge trim. All of them come pre-installed. You don't have to worry about putting the edge trim on yourself. If you run into any issues with the edge trim, we do offer the edge trim by itself in a replacement pack. Super easy, hop on the website and order. So after that, one thing I want to highlight with this splitter is there are some pre-drilled holes, not all of them. As we move through the video, I'm going to show you where to drill some of the other holes, and that can vary based on your application. Again, the 1LT, 2LT, and 3LT do have some different kind of bumper features, so we don't want to pre-drill the entire splitter to make sure that we don't have any interference among the models. But I will say, these back holes that are pre-drilled will be on every single C8 splitter, and we'll show you exactly where those go. Okay, now I want to shift your attention towards the top center of the splitter. You're going to see 4 smaller holes and 1 big hole in the middle. We'll get into exactly what that's used for later. It's going to allow you to access a bolt that if we didn't have that there, you wouldn't be able to use. Now, this is also going to come with your splitter. Don't throw this out. I like to call this kind of like a closing cap or closing puck. So what this is going to do is once the splitter is on the bumper and you get the bumper on the car and you install the bolt that we'll show you later, you're going to throw this guy over top of that hole, and that's going to seal everything up. There's provided hardware for it, and we'll get into the details on that later. As we move down to the left side here, this is everything that is going to come inside of your package. Again, LVA, one of the things we offer, many customization options, from the edge trim to certain custom LVA hardware colors to the actual LVA decal itself, and of course, splitter rods. So what are you gonna see when you get your package? Well, you're gonna have one of these big LVA accessory bags, probably smack dab right in the middle of the splitter. So the first thing you want to do is you want to grab this. Now inside it's going to have all of your hardware, decals, and custom options that you choose, as well as a packing slip. Not going to go over the packing slip with you, but always pull that packing slip out, read everything over, make sure that our packager put everything in that you ordered and didn't mess anything up. If they did, there's an email address at the bottom. Shoot us an email, we'll get it taken care of, no problem. Now, moving on. Inside of this, as I mentioned before, there are adjustable splitter rods. If you choose, you don't have to run them with this splitter. We're fairly confident that at traditional highway speeds, this splitter is going to have no problem without splitter rods. Now, if you're planning on going above the speed limit, as many Corvette owners do, I would highly recommend adding a set of our V2 splitter rods in one of the many awesome anodized finishes. On top of that, every single one is going to come with provided hardware. This is going to be all the hardware you need to get the job done. Moving forward, the last thing is going to be your LVA decal. Again, that decal can be customized based on color, and we'll show you all of the colors available in 1 second. Okay, and that's everything that you're going to receive when you order your LVA C8 front splitter kit. From the accessories to the splitter itself, the little puck that you don't want to forget, that's everything that's going to be in your package. Next up, I'm going to show you how to take this splitter and mount it up to this bumper. Okay, you've unboxed everything. Now it's time to get the splitter onto the bumper. First step is going to be lay your splitter flat on the table. Now you want to make note of which side you have facing up. Our products come with a satin finish on one side and a gloss finish on the other. We typically opt to have the satin side face up. It's our personal preference. We have noticed that, the gloss side, like many gloss black paints, you'll start seeing some swirl marks and stuff like that. So if you're super detail oriented, maybe go with the satin side facing up. It might just look better a little bit longer. So we have got the satin side facing up. We're simply gonna grab the bumper cover that we removed already. We're gonna take the bumper cover and we're gonna set it as close to, directly on top of the splitter as we can. So once that's set on there, the next step is we're gonna start lining up these edges. The edges are what's gonna get your splitter perfectly centered. So with the C8 splitter, there are two specific areas where you can center this. The first one being these holes right in the center. You wanna get those lined up. Sometimes it'll help if you take some of the provided hardware and you have those sticking up through the holes and you can kind of center the splitter to the belly pan based on the factory holes. And then once you have that kind of in the rough right area, you can come over to each side, lift the side up and just, make sure it's lined up with the back of the bumper here. And then also we're gonna take a measurement from one side and then go over to the other side and take that measurement. Now, if those measurements are off, your bumper is not centered on the splitter. And it is very important that you get this as close to center as possible. Okay, next up, now that everything is centered, we're gonna take a small C-clamp and we're gonna place it on both the far left and right edges of the splitter and the bumper, just to hold those two edges together. And now we're gonna do this so that when we get our drill bit out, we'll be able to lock these two areas in place. And once they're locked in place, the splitter will not be moving anywhere on the bumper. So just take your C-clamp. If you have another kind of clamp, it'll probably work fine. You just want something to really hold these two places together, and you don't want them to move at all. Clamp down with a firm amount of force. Double check that nothing moved, and repeat on the other side. Before you remove the bumper from the splitter, we're gonna take a Sharpie and we're gonna trace the outline of the lower lip onto the white film. It's a very important step. We'll explain in just a second. This isn't necessary. This is something that I like to do on all of our personal shop vehicles. It just makes everything a little bit cleaner. We trace the outline of the lip, so now we know exactly what portion of the splitter is going to be showing when it's finally installed. So what can we do? Take a little blade. I'm actually going to cut probably about a ½ inch to an inch back off of this line where it's not going to be visible. So if you do scratch it with the blade, no big deal. What that's going to allow us to do is remove all of the film from the section that's actually going to be butt up against the bumper, and it's going to allow us to keep that film on the final edge, so once we get everything installed, we can then peel the final edge. Okay, now there's a reason that you don't want to leave the film on when we finally start putting the hardware through and connecting it. And the reason for that is you might think, oh, I can throw all the hardware in and then once the hardware is bolted up, I can just yank the film out from under it. That's not the case. We use these really large fender washers and those are actually going to squeeze the film down, and when you rip it, you're going to get a jagged edge all over. It's not going to look good, and it is not what I would recommend. So we went ahead, sliced up the line slightly behind. Get it started on the other side, and we're going to remove the film. What you'll notice is, albeit very satisfying, you're only going to remove the film from the section of the splitter that is never going to be seen from the outside of the car. And look at that. Perfect satin finish underneath. You get a tear, just lift it up, try to get it all in one big piece. All right. Okay, so here's what you're going to be left with after you make that trim line and peel off the film that is going to be hidden behind the bumper. If you want, you can do the same thing on the other side. Now, mind you, this is going to be the bottom side of the splitter. You're never going to see it. It's probably going to get hit on multiple curbs, road debris, grime, etc. So if you get a couple little scuffs on the bottom, it's not typically a huge deal. So I'm just going to remove all the film from the bottom since our table has a decently nice soft surface, and we're going to continue on with the install. Okay, now that everything is clamped in place, we're going to drill a hole through the bumper and then through the splitter to lock everything in place with the provided hardware. And we're going to do this if you look really close, there's kind of a circle next to this factory mounting point for the lip, and we're just gonna drill straight through that and down through the splitter. Okay, always be sure that it went completely through. Okay, once you finish one side, do the exact same on the other. You want to get the drill bit as straight as possible. Go ahead and brace the splitter on the bottom with your hand and drill through. Okay. Next up, we're going to take the provided hardware and we're going to insert it in the end holes that we drilled. We're going to start with the 1/4 20 by, I believe, 1.5 inch bolt, corresponding 1/4 20 lock nut, as well as 2 1-inch fender washers. So step one, let's take the bolt and fender washer, put that on first. We're going to go through the bottom so we don't have bolts sticking down towards the ground. We're going to push this through the splitter first, and then through the bumper. We're going to take this remaining fender washer and the lock nut, and we're going to loosely thread that on top, and then we're going to repeat the process on the other side. Once we finish it on the other side, we're going to ensure that both ends are perfectly centered and have the same amount hanging out on both sides. If that's the case and everything is true, we're going to go ahead and crank down, tighten those lock nuts. You do not want to over tighten them, and also make sure you read that little galling notice or lubrication notice that comes in your hardware kit. You do not want to forget to lubricate those. You can use WD-40, liquid wrench, any form of aluminum or copper anti-seize, just something, because we use 316 stainless steel, which is a marine grade stainless steel, and if you do not use that, you might experience galling, which is essentially the friction from tightening that lock nut is going to weld the two together. You're going to end up having to drill everything out. It's not a fun time. So give it a squirt of WD-40 or use another lubricant and you should be good to go. Okay, now that everything's centered up and installed on both sides, we're going to take our 1/4 inch drive ratchet with, this is a 5/32 Allen key attachment. You can also use a 4mm metric, it'll work the same, and a 11mm wrench. I'm gonna put the wrench on top of the nut, and then we're gonna tighten from the bottom. And you wanna keep tightening until you start to feel some resistance. There isn't a specific foot-pound torque rating for this. You just don't wanna over-tighten these. You can snap them if you are the Hulk. So coming up, looks like we got everything almost tightened up. A little bit more. What I would say is go until you really can't, and then maybe go to a 1/4 turn or so past that. You really don't have to just crank these things down. The nylon locking nut feature is going to get the amount of tightness sitting there throughout the whole install. Now that both ends are secured and the bumper isn't going to move forward, backwards, left, right, let's go ahead and remove this film before it starts getting trapped as we move the bolts towards the front of the lip. So pull away from the bumper if you need to, lift up on the bumper, relieve some of the pressure. You don't want to get any of this torn and stuck under the front side. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to hold the camera and kind of walk you through this one. This is how we're going to mount all of the nuts and bolts that are going to go up under as close as we can to the farthest front edge of the bumper. The closer we can get it, the more secure of a fit we're going to have and the less chance of a product failure. If you start mounting them, further this way and you have a larger gap on the front, you're going to put a lot more force on the splitter itself, as well as a lot more force on the actual belly pan of the bumper. So follow these instructions and I'm going to show you exactly how to drill these holes, since everything is very tight. So as you can see right here, okay, I've got a number 1, and then as we move right, we got 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the way over to 6. So what this is this is going to be a line that we're going to use on the back side of the splitter to measure up and drill a hole from the back all the way through the bumper. So number 1 is going to start right here on the edge, and it's going to go up 7 inches underneath. Move down to number 2, same principle. You kind of look at where it is. It's next to the 3rd hole from the left, and that's going to be 9.5 inches up. As we go to number 3, it's gonna be 11 inches. And then we're gonna go back down. So 11 inches for number 4, 9.5 inches for number 5. And then again, we're gonna do 7 inches for number 6. Now, to make it easy on yourself, use your paint marker and just wrap it around the edge and make a little mark on the actual splitter itself. So when we flip this over, we're gonna be able to go whoop, right up the back side of the splitter, and we'll know exactly where to go. Now for these edge ones, it's gonna be a little more tricky to do because you can't kind of flip it over on the splitter and make a mark. But what we can do is we can use this mounting hole, the factory mounting hole, as a reference point, and we can measure over 1 inch to the outside and then have our line go up from there. So let's flip this bumper over and we'll start drilling some holes. Okay, so here's what everything looks like. I flipped the bumper over onto a cart so I could access the bottom half of it, and we have all those measurements transferred over accordingly. So again, starting on the left, we have 1 inch over from the hole and then 7 inches vertical. Then we have 9.5 inches, 11, 11, 9.5, and 7. So at the very top, I marked little circles, and I'm just gonna go ahead and take the same size drill bit that we used for the 2 end mounts, and we're gonna start drilling some holes. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is you wanna be extremely careful that you don't drill through too far, because if you do, that drill bit's gonna be coming right up and out of the bumper. So I'm gonna start right here in 1. I'm gonna work my way right all the way over to 6. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my hand on the back, kind of on the bumper side. I'm gonna apply some pressure forward so that when I drill, I can gauge how far I'm going through. So what you're gonna feel is you're gonna feel it go through the splitter first, then there's gonna be a gap. After that gap, you're gonna hit the belly pan. That is where you wanna stop. If you hit a third gap and you go through that, your drill bit is coming right out the top side of the bumper, and that is not a fun repair. So, let's start drilling. So we're just gonna start with a really slow speed. Once you get through the aluminum face, everything drills through pretty easy. I'm gonna stop once we get through the splitter. Okay, right there, I'm gonna back this out. We're through the splitter, but we're not through that belly pan yet. So now I'm gonna reinsert the bit. I'm gonna go right up until I feel that belly pan, which I do right here. And I'm gonna go very slow. Okay. Now I'm through the belly pan. I'm not pushing forward at all. I'm just gonna clear it out a little bit, throw it in reverse. We're gonna come all the way back out. And that's how we do it without going straight through the face of the bumper. So we're gonna go ahead, take this, and I'm gonna go through the remainder of these 6. I actually think I'm just gonna drill through the splitter first in all of them. That way I'm not getting overzealous and increasing the risk of going through. Okay, now everything is all drilled, all holes 1 through 6, and all the paint marker marks have been wiped off with alcohol, so we're ready to start throwing some hardware in here. Welcome back, it's a new day, got a new set of clothes on, and we're ready to tackle the remainder of this install. We're gonna focus on the frontmost bolts, the ones we drilled the 6 holes in the back, or on the back side, underside of the bumper for. We're gonna actually start with the centermost 4, and we're gonna worry about those the 2 ones on the ends after we get the first 4 in. But before I tell you what hardware you're gonna use for this portion of the install, I'm actually gonna show you how to set up the bumper to make this as easy as possible. If you have 2 tables, you can actually set them up next to each other with a area in the middle so that you can access the underside. What we like to do is we actually just take a couple rolls of our custom LVA tape and we sit the bumper up off of the table so that way we can access the underside of the bumper. That's gonna make putting the bolts through, because we're gonna have to kind of finagle around some of the bolts to really get them to sit in there correctly, because we are using a spacer as well. Now, before we get into this is probably gonna be the most frustrating part of this installation. Take your time, try to remain calm. If something isn't working for you, just take a quick breather and get back into it. There's only 6 of them. Once you get through the whole thing, everything else is gonna go smoothly. It'll be a lot more simple. So let's get into the hardware that you're gonna need. Okay, so before we put the hardware through the bumper and through the splitter, let's show you how everything is gonna work. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this is I believe it's a 2.75, 2 3/4 inch stainless steel bolt. We're gonna take the same fender washers we've been using, throw that onto the bolt. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this and you're gonna put this from the bottom, through the bottom of the splitter, through the hole, okay? And you're gonna get it just in between the bottom layer of the bumper, the belly pan, to where you're able to lift up the flap, and you'll see what I mean by that in a second. And when you're able to do that, you'll slide one of these provided spacers on top. So this is gonna sit here. You're gonna take one more spacer, slide that on top of the other one. Then you're gonna put this bolt through the top part of the belly pan, which will be the very top, where we're then gonna add another fender washer and the nylon lock nut. So what we're gonna see here, right, is that these two spacers are gonna get sandwiched in the open void, you could say, of the bumper. So rather than just, cranking this down and having these two fender washers squish the bumper and everything together, this is gonna preserve the shape of your factory Z51 lip and not crush everything together. So I know it's kind of hard to imagine right here, but I'll try to get some, it's gonna be difficult, but I'll try to get some shots of putting everything back into the car. So let's get into that. I'm gonna try to show you this process as easily as possible. So I'm gonna start out, I got our long bolt with the washer already. I'm gonna go underneath the splitter. Now I've got something propped in here to separate the bumper from the splitter. And we're gonna go in through the splitter, and then you can see the bolt pop through right here. Now what we don't wanna do is go all the way through into the top because we have to get our spacer on. So that's easily done. So I got something under here to actually hold the bolt there for me. Now if you have a buddy, you can have him hold it down as well. So I'm gonna take our first spacer. Now, if we do a new version of this, we probably are just gonna have one spacer rather than two. These are both 1/2 inch spacers. I think we're gonna try to have a total of a 1 inch spacer added. So if you see one that is longer than a 1/2 inch, you're not gonna have two, you're only gonna use one. So here's what I'm gonna do. Now, I find it easier to actually do this from the front side. So you can kind of walk around to the front, lift the bumper up, and then slide the spacers on from the front. But obviously, the more that you get done, the harder that's gonna be because the bumper is not gonna wanna raise on the front. So you're probably gonna have to kind of slide these in from the backside, and hopefully that works. So I'm gonna try to get this one from the front. If it doesn't work, I'll jump back over and do it on the back. Now again, it's gonna be kind of frustrating. It might take a couple tries. Okay, there's the first one. Now that that one's on, we're actually gonna have to raise the bolt a little bit higher. So have a buddy, kind of push the bolt through a little bit more. For me, I'm just gonna use something else on the bottom to act as a kind of a stack. All right, I'm gonna go on with the second one. And we're gonna scooch this right on top. Nope, see? Might take a couple of tries to get this right. Come on. There we go. Okay, now once you have both spacers on, the key here is you're not gonna wanna have this drop. You're gonna want it to stay right where it is, because if this bolt drops out, you're restarting. So now, I'm actually going to push this through the top part of the belly pan, and I'm gonna grab our washer and nut, and I'm gonna leave it hand tight on top. We're not gonna tighten any of these down until the last one has been put on hand tight. The reason for that is if you tighten one down, you're gonna not, if you tighten one down, you're not gonna have a lot of wiggle room when trying to put the remainder of the hardware pieces in. So leave those hand tight, that's on there. That's not gonna go anywhere now, so we should be good. All right, now we're moving on to the outer two of the 6 in the front that we drilled out. We now have the 4 center ones put in loosely, hand tight, and now we're gonna focus on the outer two. You're gonna have pretty much the same hardware with the exception of the spacer. You're gonna switch from, well, either the 2 1/2 inch spacers or the 1 inch spacer to a singular 3/4 inch spacer. On top of that, we're gonna drop down to a 2 inch long bolt rather than a 3 inch long bolt. You'll find that as we move to the edge, the gap between the splitter and the belly pan starts to slim. So we're gonna drop down 1 inch here and then drop down about 1/4 inch on the spacer. 2 fender washers and 1 of the nylon lock nuts will stay the same. So let's jump back into this. For reference, here is the bolt that the hole that we're gonna be focusing on now. We've done the 4 that are over to this side. Now we're working on these 2 end ones. So the process is exactly the same. Use your fender and bolt, or fender washer and bolt, and go up through the splitter through this hole right here. Then we're gonna slide our spacer in as we lift up this, this belly pan flap, put that in, then raise the bolt all the way through, 1 more fender washer on top, and put that nut on top as well. And then repeat on the other side. I'm gonna be using a 1/4 inch drive ratchet with our 4mm Allen head on the bottom side, as well as a 11mm open-ended wrench on top. Now what you don't want to do is you don't want to take the wrench and use the close end and put it on top, because as you tighten the bolt and it comes through, you're going to get your wrench stuck in here, you're going to have to loosen it, it's going to ruin that nylon locking feature. So let's take the open-ended and the wrench, get our bit on the bottom, and then you're just going to hold right here and tighten down. Once this one is done, I'll repeat the process for the other 5, and then we'll go into the next step. Okay, now that I showed you how to do 1 of the front 4 bolts, I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the rest, and then I'll bring you back in when I go through and tighten all of them. Now we're going to move on to the edge. There are 3 along the outer edge. I'm going to show you on the passenger side, and then I'll do the driver's side. So we have 1 bolt up here in between these 2 speed clips, a 2nd one in between those 2, and a 3rd one in between these 2. We're basically going to be going from the edge all the way up to that end 1 of the center 6 that we had drilled. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. 1, you can either use one of these handy you can use one of these very handy 90-degree impact driver with a, Okay, there's 2 ways you can do this. The first way is you can drill up from the underside. Well, you'll have to measure first. The first way is you can measure everything out on the underside like we did with the original 6 and drill up through the edge. That's a little bit more risky because you run the risk of breaking through. The other option is you can get yourself one of these super handy 90-degree impact driver attachments, and this is going to go right into like a Milwaukee or Craftsman or whatever cordless impact driver you have, and then you're going to get a stubby drill bit to go on the end of it. So this is what I'm going to use for the install. Let's check out how this works. We're going to start off on this 3rd hole here on the end, and I find the best way to do this is to actually start with a much smaller pilot bit. So we're going to throw the pilot bit into that 90-degree attachment, come right up and go straight through. Okay, now let's switch over to the larger and final bit, and this one is going to go clear through to the splitter and out the underside. Now the thing with this is a longer bit. So we're gonna have to start off kind of angled and then work our way down into the splitter. So, get it started. It's a little tricky. All right, now that we've got it started, I'm gonna push on the backside and I'm gonna work it up straight. Just like that. And now we're gonna go straight down and through the splitter. There's hole 1. I'm going to repeat this for the remaining 3 holes on this side, and then also on the other side, and then I'll show you what hardware we need to get those buttoned up. For this one, we're not going to be using any kind of a spacer. We're simply going to take our bolt, we're going to throw a washer on there, have this go up through the splitter, and then up into the hole we drilled on the bumper lip, or on the edge. We're going to take our 2nd washer, throw that on top, and then we're going to use this lock nut and fasten everything down like normal. I'm not going to show you guys that process. Everything is pretty straightforward. These last two holes are going to be sitting right on top of this duct. Now, if you look down at the actual area, there's a little circle, and that's going to be on both sides. Now, that circle should be stamped there from the factory. And all I did here is I went up at a 45-degree angle to the left, and I moved it up an inch right here. So that's where we're going to be drilling our hole. Now, the reason for that is if we look at the underside, there isn't all, like if we drilled right where that circle was, it would put it right on this edge, and we want to move it up more into the meat of this section of the underside. Okay, so now I'm over on the other side, just to show you how this one is and where it's located. Again, right on top of that duct. If we move in, this time, we scooch that hole 45 degrees up and to the right, and we're gonna drill that out. Okay, at this point in time, you should understand how the bolts go in, how they're used, how the spacers work. So I'm not gonna show you the drilling process or the bolt mounting process for these last two. I'm just gonna skip to a clip and show you overall where all of the bolts we used are located, as well as the total count of those bolts, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, first step here, use a 23/64 drill bit, and we're going to open up these holes. I believe if you have the metric version of this, it is 9 millimeters. Might want to double check me on Google for that one, but 23/64 is what we're going to use, and we're going to simply open up all 4 of those small holes to make room for the rib nuts. If you have some rough edges after drilling, get one of these deburring tools. All you gotta do is run it around the edge. Super easy. It'll clean up the surface of your hole. Pull off any of those scraggly metal pieces. And there you have it. For a rib nut installation into those little 4 holes, all you're gonna need is a rib nut gun. There are a few different types of these on Amazon. If you go to any of our wicker bill listings on the website, in the description, there are some links to some brands that we use. This one has an M thread anvil threaded into the end. We have an M6 rib nut. All we're gonna do is screw this onto the end, pretty much all the way down. Now, we're gonna take it over to our drilled hole and insert the rib nut. Now, once we get up to the hole, we're gonna take our rib nut tool, insert the rib nut, and all we're gonna do is squeeze the tool. As you squeeze the tool, it's crushing down the back side of the rib nut, and it's basically forming a barrier on the back side that's not gonna allow this rib nut to pull out. So once you do one squeeze, go ahead and just thread in the tool a little bit more, and we're gonna do a second squeeze. If it's too hard, just unthread a little bit. There we go. Now, this doesn't have to be, it's not gonna be holding 400 pounds with this little puck. So we're just gonna do a couple squeezes, light pressure, and repeat it into the other 4 holes. All right, who's ready to get your bumper and splitter back on the car? Before we do that, we've got a couple holes that we're gonna drill and insert rib nuts along this bottom piece of the frame. This is actually going to be the chassis mount portion of this install. As you can notice, there are 4 factory bolt locations that go into here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna drill out 1 in the center and then 2 on each side, where we're gonna install some more of the provided M6 rib nuts. So to get this process started, I'll give you a few measurements, but let's go ahead and put a piece of tape along this entire portion here. And this is gonna allow us to measure and mark where we need to drill. And then definitely rub into where all the factory holes are, because we're gonna go off of those for our measurements. Okay, the first thing we're gonna wanna do is mark or make a small mark in the center of each of the factory holes. So we got kind of 2 in the center here. And then as we work our way down, got 1 more, and then 1 on that far edge. And same thing right here. So actually there are 6 of them. Okay, so the first hole, we're gonna go right in the center of the 2 most centered factory holes. So if you take your ruler, I believe, let's see, this measures out to be 9.5 inches. So all we have to do is make a mark at 4.75 or 4 3/4, and then center it right here on our mount. And that's gonna be our first drilling location. The second 2, you're gonna go all the way over to the end, and you're just gonna measure 1 inch inward from the end. Now the reason we do this is because if you go any further, you're gonna be going through both the plastic and this aluminum support, and the rib nut is not gonna wanna seat into both of those, so it's easier just to do it in the bare aluminum. All right, for the last one, go all the way over to the other side. Again, 1 inch inwards, and that's where our hole is going to be. All right, okay, next step, super easy. Grab yourself your favorite cordless drill, and we're gonna start very, very small because we wanna make sure these are extremely accurate. So I'm gonna start off with a 1/16 inch drill bit. We're gonna start off right in this center hole here. All right. Now this is aluminum, so it should go through pretty easy. Adding a little pressure, and there we go. So we got 1 drilled. Let's move over to our others. Okay. And then let's drill our final one over here. All right, okay, now that that's finished and we have our pilot holes drilled, let's go ahead and remove our tape. And then we're just gonna step up each drill bit. So to get this done, you know, these rib nuts, as we mentioned in a couple steps prior, you're gonna drill up to a 23/64 inch drill bit or 9 millimeters. With the tape removed, we're gonna have to open up all these pilot holes up to their final size to accept the M6 rib nut, and that's gonna be that 23/64 inch drill bit or 9 millimeters. So let's start opening them up. All right, I like to do 1 step between the small 1/16 to 23/64. I'm gonna take a 1/4 inch as kind of a middle one. Perfect. So we're gonna drill this one out first. After you open up the hole to the 1/4 inch, you can step up to that final 23/64 bit. We'll do that now. All right. Okay, once you've got it opened up, go ahead and repeat that process for the 2 on either end, and then we'll insert the rib nut. All right, now that all of our holes are opened up, we're going to remove this push clip on the driver's side so that we can pull this plastic piece down to insert our rib nut. Awesome, that should give us more than enough room. Okay, same thing here, same rib nut tool. We're gonna take our M6 rib nut and thread it onto the end. All right. All right, we'll start the middle one. That's gonna be the most difficult here. And blow off some of these shavings. Okay. Now you're gonna have to pull the plastic down to make enough room. Insert the rib nut. Start crushing it down. Again, a couple twists to get this thing fully seated. Kind of difficult with this plastic being here. I'm gonna go for 3 twists here. We're going into aluminum, so you don't have to worry about it bubbling really. That's gonna be a little bit too much force. Just gonna do tiny turns here each time until we get this thing fully seated. About 2.5 full squeezes there. And that one is fully seated. Nice. Now we have our threaded hole, perfect. Grab another M6 rib nut, and then we're gonna repeat that for the holes on each side. And then 1 more on the other side. Let's unscrew this final one. All right, now all of our rib nuts are properly seated. We're gonna take our push clip and reinsert it right where we removed it, which I believe, yeah, goes right here. Okay, that'll hold that up. Well, you've almost done it. The last step is gonna be getting the bumper back onto the car. There's really no sense in me showing you step by step on how to do that. If you forgot, go ahead and watch the bumper removal, but in reverse order. I'm gonna do a little time lapse of getting this back on the car, but don't go anywhere. After that time lapse, there are gonna be 2 more steps to get this completely finished. One of those steps, I'm gonna show you exactly what hardware from your hardware kit you're gonna need to use for these 3 rib nuts on the bottom side once the bumper's on the car. And then the last step is gonna be applying your LVA decal. So here we go. All right, the bumper's been completely reattached. I hope you guys enjoyed the time lapse. With that said, we have all of the factory hardware back in, as well as one of our little M6 by 1 inch bolts that are gonna go up into those 3 rib nuts that we installed. So to do this, really simple, just throw the bolt through the washer, and now we're just gonna start threading it by hand into that rib nut. Now you don't wanna strip these, and you also don't wanna over tighten them. Okay, once you have it hand tight, you want to take a ratchet and start tightening it down. Now you don't want to over tighten this, because if you do, you could spin the rib nut. And if you do that, you're out of luck, unfortunately. All right, so just go ahead and get this guy started by hand. I'm gonna get it all the way up into the rib nut until you start to feel some resistance. Once you feel some resistance, switch over to your ratchet and start to tighten. Now you don't want to over tighten, because you can spin the rib nut, and if that rib nut spins, you have to take this whole thing off, drill out the rib nut, go up a size, and you don't want to do that. All right, that is tight. I'm gonna go ahead and throw one in over here on the other side, and all of our rib nut chassis bolts are put in. So this thing's pretty solid. We're gonna put on the last little hockey puck piece here, and then move on to the decal, and this install is gonna be wrapped up. Let's get everything completely buttoned up. We put in the last factory bolt up into that support rod that comes down through the bumper, which is why that cutout is here. Let's take our, I'm calling it a hockey puck, with our M6 bolt. This is gonna be the same length bolt that you used along the chassis bracing back here. However, it's gonna feature some of our custom anodized LVA hardware. So on this one, let's see, going right here, just gonna get this all threaded in by hand into those rib nuts in the splitter. Just a couple of turns to get it kind of hung up there. Grab a couple more. Okay. Just get everything started by hand. And then once they're all loosely in by hand, we'll start tightening them down. And these do not have to be super tight. Just get them in there enough that it'll hold without an issue. Okay, that's 3. And this will seal up the underside of the splitter from any air getting caught and trapped up in the little cavity between the bumper or the belly pan and the splitter itself. All right, I'm gonna start getting these tightened down by hand. Grab my ratchet and just button these guys up, and other than putting the wheels on, we'll be done. Okay, feeling some resistance, let's stop it there. And the nice part about this portion is it's also going to serve as kind of a scrape protector. So if you hit the splitter on something, this is the lowest point. So these will scrape first before your actual splitter will scrape. All right, I think they're all just about tightened up. And there we have it. The entire splitter is on. It is super, super sturdy. We just need to get our LVA decal on the top, throw the wheels back on, and this install will be complete. We've made it to the final step, and that's going to be the decal installation right here, front and center on the splitter itself. We're going to go ahead and do a red decal for the video. It'll stand out and match the interior. So step 1 for the decal is to make sure your surface is clean. We're going to use some 99.9% isopropyl rubbing alcohol. It's gonna remove any grease and dirt and grime, fingerprints and whatnot from the surface. So we're just gonna go right over the decal area, let that haze off. Perfect. Now we've got a perfectly clean surface to toss our decal on. So in a lot of cars, you don't have this super nice point right there in the middle. You have to measure and do a bunch of other stuff. But on the Corvette, I'm just gonna take some of our, got this like 16th of an inch thick tape. I'm gonna put it right on the peak here, and I'm gonna bring it all the way out to the peak of the splitter. Just gonna be, if we're looking at it completely straight, right about here. Just make sure everything is nice and centered. Now we have our center line. Obviously we can't put the decal directly on top of that, so I find that the easiest way to do this is to kind of set the decal, roughly where it's going to be before you peel off the backing and everything. Okay, right there looks good. And all I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna take 4 pieces of tape, and I'm gonna put one right on the outside each corner, so that once we remove that center line, we'll know exactly where to place this. And if you want, go ahead and eyeball it. But if you just spent all this time getting your splitter install perfect, why not go the extra 5 minutes or so to make the decal perfect. Now we have our quadrant per se. I'm actually gonna add a couple more kind of horizontally going across. Now I'm gonna remove our center line, and then I'm gonna give it one more clean with the alcohol. Make sure everything is nice and clean. This decal won't want to stick if there's any fingerprints underneath of it. All right, next step, we're going to take the decal. It's got a clear film on top. That is called transfer film. So what we want to do is we want the decal to separate from the backing paper and stick to that transfer film. If it's sticking to the paper, just really push on that area and it should start to come off the transfer film. There we have it, clear backing. We'll set that to the side. Now we just need to take our decal and line it up back within those quadrants, right where it looks, right where we had it before. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosely set it there, and then I'm gonna stand up and take a look at it from the top and see if it looks off-centered in any way. All right, now I'm just gonna rub the transfer film and decal right over the entire part of the LVA. You can use a squeegee for this, you can use your finger. I find that using a finger is just fine. And then once you have it all the way on there, as long as your surface is clean, the decal is gonna stay stuck to the splitter. And I would peel this on back of itself, not up. I want to peel it back over top of itself. Slowly until you're all the way at the end. Awesome. All right, now we just need to remove the little tape quadrant we built. Just discard all of the extra tape and backing paper and all that. Just set that to the side for now. Okay, now we're just gonna give it one more wipe with the alcohol. I'm gonna spray it on my towel. You wanna be really careful on the peaks of the LVA. I would wipe away from it. And there we go. Got all this, any glue adhesive that was on there, completely gone. And there we have it, an extremely clean LVA decal installation. Okay, there's one last step that I like to take, and this goes for really any decal or vinyl installation, and that's going to be post-heating the decal. I think typically they say between 140 and 180 degrees is where you want to get it. For us specifically, right in these peaks of the V, we want to get it really hot and then just kind of press it down, and that's going to make sure that when we're cleaning this or wiping it, we're not going to be peeling that decal back off. So we're going to take our cordless heat gun, and I'm just going to apply a bunch of heat all over this decal. You want to keep it moving, not in one spot. You don't want to melt the paint off the splitter. Just kind of feel it with the hand, see how warm it's getting. And you can do this with a torch. You can do it with a corded heat gun. All of that would be about the same. All right, that's nice and hot to the touch. Set that to the side. And all I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna press right on the peaks of that V. Really just wanna lock those in, go over the whole decal. When you're wiping left and right, the peaks or the end of that V, you really wanna kind of come up on you sometimes. Okay. Don't click off this video without torquing your lug nuts. The desired spec from Chevy is 140 foot-pounds. Crank those things down until this torque wrench clicks, and you're done. If you made it this far in the video, I would like to say thank you for sticking through the whole thing. If you've already purchased and you're installing your LVA C8 Front Splitter, I hope it went well and I hope you're enjoying it. I think it came out perfect. It's the perfect addition to this front end. It's a little weak from the factory, even with that Z51 front lip. If you haven't ordered yet, go ahead and head on over to www.liquidvinyl.com and place your order today. We always have these in stock since they are made to order. Our typical lead times are 1 to 5 business days, and we ship via UPS Ground. You can get upgraded shipping if you would like to pay for it. And that's all I have for you. If you like the video, if you like the quality, and you want to see more installation videos and cinematics and walkarounds and stuff like that of some of the LVA vehicles, you can follow our Instagram at Liquid Vinyl for all of the various LVA cars and different things going in and out. If you want to see more of the GT350R, of the 5.0 California Special, the C8, the Raptor, whatever it is, you can also follow at lva.builds. If you like everything you saw in this video and you want to see more of it, go ahead and give us a subscribe. That would really help out. We're going to be trying to post at least a video every single week, and maybe more frequently or less frequently. Also, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Once again, if you stuck around throughout the entire video, I just want to say thank you. It means a lot, and I hope you enjoy your product moving forward. Until the next one, this is Brendan with LVA signing off. We'll see you next time.